Welcome back to Fresh Outlook and the international segment of the show. We begin first with the trouble in Iraq. An al-Qaeda splinter group known as ISIS, standing for the Islamic State of Iraq and Levant, are said to be even more dangerous than al-Qaeda. Since Monday, they have taken over 2 major cities and are trying to create a Kurdish Islamic territory, which would also include Syria. But will the group expect greater resistance as it starts to reach Shiite areas closer to the capital of Baghdad? Here's more on that story.
President Barack Obama said Iraq's government must make a sincere effort to address sectarian differences, or else U.S. military help won't succeed in curbing the insurgency there.
The United States will do our part, but understand that ultimately it's up to the Iraqis as a sovereign nation to solve their problems.
Obama said the U.S. won't send troops back into Iraq.
We will not be sending U.S. troops back into combat in Iraq, but I have asked my national security team to prepare a range of other options that could help support Iraq security forces.
But he said he has asked his national security team to prepare a range of other options. Obama said the risk posed by militants in Iraq could eventually pose a threat to U.S. interests.
Dee Dee, Dr. Alain Sanders, and of course Dr. Michael Mckoy for his last show continue our discussions. Great to have you with us. Other options. We just heard President Obama use that term, other options, and there's quite a bit of criticism that something needs to be done and not wait, and that perhaps standing on the sidelines and waiting is not a great idea. I want to start off with that question. Dr. Mckoy, we'll start with you.
I really can't imagine what those other options would be at this point. I mean, at this point, ISIS forces are now headed towards Baghdad without actual physical troops on the ground, which no one, even someone as far as John McCain, is calling for. Beyond that, I don't know how you're going to stop those forces unless the Iraqis do it themselves. So I think in terms of American involvement, I think that ship has sailed. I think it's unfortunate that it sailed. I think that the U.S. should have done something earlier, much earlier, but at this point, I just don't know what else the U.S. could do.
Dr. Sanders, obviously a serious situation right now. They're saying that people are enlisting in Iraq, though, right and left. There's thousands of people enlisting.
Right. Well, overall, I mean, I think my perspective on this is that overall, I think President Obama has been right to basically stay out of it. The Arab world is a splintered world. One of the biggest divisions is that between the Shiites and the Sunnis, and quite frankly, that is an issue that needs to be resolved by the Arab world and by the Muslim world. The United States can stand and look for and deal with its national interest. And right now, our national interest may be threatened because ISIS is a dangerous organization, and establishing a base in Iraq would be dangerous for the United States. But I think our policy should basically be what is in our national interest. The civil war between the parties is an issue between them, and we should let that be.
Well, it's been going on for hundreds of years
That's
as well.
Right.
Dee Dee, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I do agree with Senator McCain when he says, really, I think the entire National Security Council and the Obama administration should be fired. Really, they failed. He's been there 5 years and just let it go. I mean, the one thing about Obama, which you basically are saying, is that he just lets it alone. I mean, he really does nothing, didn't do anything in Syria, has done nothing here. So there's a true vacuum. So that's where the Republicans and Democrats definitely part ways. We feel like there shouldn't be a vacuum. Do something. You know, we feel like that does cause America danger. But right now, I do think at the very least, get rid of the guys who failed, which is the National Security Council.
Well, right now, there's reports that ISIS is going to be moving towards Baghdad. Let's just talk about this group right now. Even Al-Qaeda doesn't want to be even associated with them.
That's scary.
They've shown murders where people are almost crucified. I mean, it's really, really horrific stuff. Who are these guys?
I mean, well, again, at this point, we know is they're worse than Al-Qaeda. They're at least their segment in Syria that we know of have been supported by a lot of groups in the Arabian Peninsula, Saudi Arabia, Qatar. But I just want to step back and think about what we're saying about non-involvement. Is the Obama administration, the United States of America, really saying we're willing to let Baghdad, and we're okay with letting Baghdad fall to this group? Now, Shias are finally mobilizing, but really what we're about to witness is a horrifically bloody, destructive civil war. The Obama administration super overlearned the lesson of the Bush administration. The Bush administration went into Iraq, without a plan, which was horrific for Iraq. Now the Obama administration has overlearned that lesson, pulled all our forces out, and now we're about to witness another civil war
and the
possible fall of Baghdad, a civil war that's going to stretch towards Syria. And the best hope of the current Iraqi government is Iran. And we're actually saying, let's have an Iranian Arab civil war in the middle of Iraq.
I disagree with all of that. One of the biggest strategic mistakes that the United States ever did was the Bush administration war in Iraq. It destabilized the situation. It destabilized the situation and led to the rise of Iran. What needs to be done is to step back.
Let me just, Iran and Iraq are two very different countries.
That's right. But what you need to pay attention to is the balance of power. There are no good guys in this entire region. There are only people who might be protective of our interests and people who might be not protective of our interests. What we need to understand is that this is a civil war. This is a cultural war between two major parts of Islam. We cannot intervene and make a decision for these people as to what is the correct solution.
So you're saying just let everybody get slaughtered and leave them alone?
What I am saying is that we need to pay attention.
What would you do?
We need to pay attention to our national interest. It would not be in our national interest for ISIS to set up a mini-state that is a terrorist state.
But that's what they're doing.
That's what they're doing.
It would not be in our interest. That's right. But our options, as you pointed out, are limited. We are not in a position to insert ground troops. Were we to do that, we would get the condemnation of all kinds of people and no cooperation from anyone. What we can do is a very limited surgical kind of operation. That requires thinking, that requires planning, and I suspect that that is exactly what is going on in the White House right now.
Well, let's talk about the 1 million troops that were trained by the U.S. at a cost of $25 million to our taxpayers. What's happened to them?
It's all lost.
We all know
it was a waste of money.
For the last 5 years, you've done nothing with them. Look, I mean, you know, it was pretty stable, we're in good shape, and I know a lot of people hate President Bush. Like you said, I knew you'd go there, that it's a blame Bush. But look, I mean, when President Bush was there, and at the end, I mean, you may think it was too costly, but it was stabilized. Now, it is a disaster, and I agree with you, Dr. Mckoy. Way overlooked. I said, let's pull everything, let's do nothing. So let's create the vacuum and waste all the money that was spent and then just let it go to hell, which is basically what's happening because ISIS is a terrible group. I mean, when you are to the extreme of Al-Qaeda, very scary situation.
I feel like I'm living in 2004 again, or at least 2003. I remember the lead up to the war in 2003, talking with people saying this is a bad idea, not because Saddam Hussein's a bad guy, but because we're not ready for the chaos that's going to happen. In 2004, 2005, you just saw it go to hell. I feel like we're living there again, where you're just seeing this thing go to hell, and we're just standing there like, what did we allow happen? American blood and treasure actually was committed there, stabilized it in 2007, 2008. We could have had the SOFA agreement, stabilized the area. I hear what you're saying about this being a long-term civil war and division in the Arab community, but we actually had a working solution that the Obama administration just completely threw out.
The working solution was maintaining occupation with billions of dollars of troops, which the American population was not willing to sustain.
No, at that point
and
in time, you didn't have to spend that.
I actually was over there
That's
reporting,
wrong.
and I could see the change
in
Baghdad for the betterment, and it was so stable. And our story was actually on the zoo, believe it or not, because people did not go to the zoo because they were so afraid to go downtown Baghdad to where they were up to 3 million visitors only a few years ago. And that's how much more stable
That's true.
Baghdad
The Bush
became.
was stabilized. What people didn't like was the cost. Understand, I mean, that is an argument you can make. But it was stable, and now it's a disaster.
The stability was enforced by a regime led by Mr. Maliki that was not popular, that was repressive, that was corrupt, and that was anti-Sunni. He was sitting on top of a powder keg. And our presence there maintained that powder keg under control, but that would have required United States occupation for years.
That would have been something.
Mr. Maliki
I mean, you don't totally
is not popular. Mr. Maliki was corrupt.
It's going to be interesting.
Mr. Maliki was instrumental in bringing about the breakup of the country that we're seeing.
Let's have ISIS instead. Let's have a vacuum and ISIS walks in. Much
worse. In
worse.
essence, our foreign policy now is let's watch a bunch of let's watch a bunch of Arab and Iranian, Sunni and Shia kill each other for the next X amount of years, and then what? I mean, we're now
but this is a situation that happens worldwide.
Exactly.
The Kurdish population.
This is a situation that happens worldwide. You take a look at Africa. The United States cannot be involved in every ethnic or religious conflict around the world.
Standing by on this one is maybe a very dangerous thing to do. Quick question, because we are going to have to wrap this up. and I'm sure we could talk here for the next hour on this. We're going to see probably oil prices are going to start spiking. We're going to start seeing gas prices. The American public is then going to speak out. Very briefly, what do you think?
Well, I don't have a car and I ride the train, because you're right, gas prices will go sky high. And it's going to be very sad to see what happens in this region. It's scary.
Dr.
Yes,
Saunders?
indeed. Oil depends on stability, and this is a situation now that is anything but stable.
Well,
Do you think this is the worst situation we've seen in Iraq in the last, say, 20 years?
Certainly the last 10 years. I mean, again, I think we're about to live through 2004, 2005. Even worse, because there isn't a third party like the United States that actually wants stabilization. You're going to have two forces that want one thing to wipe out the other, and so we're just going to watch a civil war. I don't know how far it's going to spread, but I think this is.
And all that
I
money,
fear how
what we
it's going
did
to
was wasted, thrown out the window, thanks to
I fear it's
Obama.
gonna happen.
All right, I think we're going to be talking about this for the next few weeks and months to come. And keep it here to Fresh Outlook. We'll return with a look at politics here in the U.S., and you won't believe what some of our leaders had to say this week. We'll be back with that and much more.